Afternoon, YouTube. Chip's O'Toole back at work. Trying not to cause a disaster. Still working on my Arbor press stand. I'll tell you what, I've learned that 90% of the work of machining now that I'm trying to make YouTube videos, machining and fabricating, whatever else I do, 90% of the work is trying to make my camera work and trying to get ready for YouTube. It used to be if I wanted to do something, I'd go out in the garage and do it. Now I have to say, is the camera going to work? Is my phone charged? Is the phone not working again? My worthless Asus tablet, can I use it, or is it going to run, like a Commodore 64 as it usually does? How am I going to make this thing function? And by the time I get set up, it's probably been an hour since I first sat down trying to figure out a way to make this video today. Charging things, uncharging things, trying to make things run correctly. So that's the hard part. This stuff here, this is a joke. So anyway, what am I doing? Well, I'm going to have an Arbor press. My Arbor press has 2 holes in it. Those holes are for screws or bolts, and they were going to fasten it to this thing. So I made my little marks here with a Sharpie, and I'm going to open these up on the drill press. I could just do it with a hand drill. I'm thinking maybe I'll just do that. These don't have to be the most wonderful holes on earth. They're located very precisely. I used this thing and measured very carefully, and I used a carbide scribe to make these little marks in here in the black Sharpie stuff. And I used a punch, which I no longer have because I put it away, to make a little knot there for the drill bit to fit into. So these are nicely located and all that. But when it actually comes to the precision, drilling vertically, you could be off by 30 degrees and the screws would still go through, and they're going to be hidden by the Arbor press anyway. But I may do it on the drill press. Anyway, right now I'm just opening it up with a center drill, which I don't know if you can see that or not. I'm just opening it up to give it a starting place for the drill press. So. Come on. This isn't the greatest center drill on earth. It's a Chinese job from Enco, which is same company as MSC. Enco is gone now. They closed it up. Enco was great for machinists. For amateur machinists, they always had stuff on sale for insane prices. Anyway, these are not their best products. These are their, bargain basement Chinese center drills. That's good enough, though. It'll find its way. All right. I'm using rigid pipe cutting oil. Boy, that's some good video, isn't it? Pretty exciting. I've got some better center drills, but I always try to use the crummy ones first. I don't like the old ladies who spend, $20,000 on living room furniture, and then they put plastic on it. I don't want to use the good stuff. That looks pretty good. I think I may open that up with another drill before going. I'm not sure I'm going to go to the drill press. I'm thinking I may just use the old unibit. I got a big collection of unibits, and this one has nice long, steps on it. It'll easily go through this 1/4-inch stuff. The funny thing is, I don't really know what size screws I'm going to use with this. I probably have the old screws I took out someplace. I'll make a wild guess and say 3/8 of an inch. Anyway, here I go. See if it'll work. Slow down the drill. I'm not trying to speed the drill up, it's just lack of coordination in my trigger finger. Trying to make little tiny adjustments and I'm, revving the snot out of it. Okay, now what's going on? Why are you so slow? Maybe my unibit's about to give up the ghost. See if anything's happening on the underside. Not a thing. Wow, that is excruciatingly slow. I'm going to do something I never do. I'm going to use one of my nice carbide bits. Cobalt. All right, where are you, sweetheart? There you go. This looks like a good size. Once you get through, a unibit goes like crazy, so I just want something that's going to get me through the other side. Anyway, Enco was a great company, but MSC killed Enco, and I think they really slaughtered their amateur market because it was just great for amateur people because you'd be sitting around pawing through the website, and they'd have something that's supposed to sell for $500, and it'd say $133, and you think, what on earth are they smoking? And you'd buy it. So I bought a tremendous amount of stuff from Enco, but it's gone now, and the MSC website's a real pain in the butt to use, and they don't give you the same coupons, and it's just a sad tale of woe. There we go. Make sure I'm not drilling through my nice welding table. This thing's turned out to be really useful. I'm using fixturing clamps to hold this thing, and it's great even if you're not welding. How are we doing? Maybe I've work hardened this. There we go. Those are holes. Maybe the end of the unibit is about had it. I wonder if I can sharpen that. It's not too small. Maybe I could get away with it. But it ought to still cut pretty well on the sides. I'm not. Well, that was certainly disappointing. It's going through, but I thought it would just go through there like a knife through cheese. I'll tell you what, I'll do it this way. Will that take a, no, I can't get a 3/8 through there yet. Okay. Okay, I'm going to go see if I can find a 3/8 inch anything and see if it'll fit in there. This camera is so crazy. it insists on shooting still pictures. The minute I walk away, it starts shooting still pictures. So I had to come back and wrestle with it. Anyway, I got this 3/8" drill bit, and I guess that would go through, but it's, needless to say, it's a tiny bit snug, so I'm going to open it up just a little more. One of the things I love about unibits is they deburr. So you put it in there and you got your nice hole, and then you just, and now you got it all deburred. So there's no burrs on the top side of this. You probably don't want to see me drill every hole. Well, okay, two. The other hole. You probably don't want to see me drill both holes. I'm going to drill both holes, then I'm going to flop it over and deburr the other sides. Hopefully I'll start welding soon. Well, here's my holes. They still got some crud sticking up, you know, where the drill went through. This is the bottom side, so. Well, that's pretty well deburred. Looks good. I guess I can forget the drill press. I know there's no way you're going to be able to see this. My Arbor press is now sitting on the plate that I just made. I didn't pick the Arbor press up because it weighs 135 pounds, and I didn't feel like lifting it up to that table and then going to the emergency room. But you probably can't tell anything from what I'm showing you. I'm banging into things with this thing. Oh, here we go. Maybe you cannot see what's happening in there. The hole fits. Something I didn't understand about this, though, was that the recess in the Arbor press, it's 2 inches across at the top, more or less. At the bottom, it's a little bit more. I'm sitting there thinking, does that mean I should open the plate up? But I don't think I should, because anything that's only going to fit through the top, you know, anything that fits through the 2 inches, you know, at the top, what I'm trying to say is if you got something 2 inches wide, that's the limit, you know, so it doesn't really help you if it's a little wider down at the bottom. So I think I'm going to leave it alone, and if it turns out I'm wrong, I can always take the Arbor press off later and grind it out bigger. So I'm happy. Well, I'm pretty proud of myself. I got this thing fixtured up, or whatever you want to call it, and I'm using my Fireball tool square thing, my aluminum square. People probably think, I don't know, I guess old-time welders think you're an idiot for buying stuff like this. But it looks like it's pretty helpful. What I've done is I got one of my legs here. Down here is the top of the Arbor press stand. Upside down with the ugly side up, so that when I weld it up, the ugly side will be hidden. And I got it, you know, fixed up here. So I got like a fat 3/16 of an inch on this side, and on that side, well, of course my hand's in the way. But over here, you know, down at the bottom, I got about 3/16, so when I weld this and it fills up, it won't go hanging over the side too much. Brushed it off with the carbon steel brush, and I don't know, it worked out pretty good. I mean, I've got it shimmed up nicely to the table. I'm pretty happy with it. I like this fixture table. I don't think this is going to go anywhere. So I'm going to put a couple of MIG beads on this and see what happens. I mean, it's not totally perfect. I notice some things. With these squares, one of the things you'll notice is there's always some measurement that's inconvenient. Like the distance from here to here on the square is too big to fit in the place where you want to put the square, or there's always some kind of little weird problem. And this time there's a little empty, there's a little place here in the Arbor press top, you know, the one that I cut out, and it turns out the corner of the square falls right on that place when you line it up with this leg. So when you clamp it down using this clamp that's part of the table, the corner tries to go into that hole. So I had to take this shim, which is a piece that I cut out of the Arbor press top, and shove it in there to prevent it from, you know, from bending this way, which is a problem. But anyway, it looks like it's working out. So either today or tomorrow, I'm going to give this thing a little welding, and we'll see what happens. Well, it's the next day and I got this thing all set up. You'll see what I can do. I'm going to try to tack it on one side and then on the other. I don't know how much difference tack welding makes when you're welding something this big. The object I'm welding isn't big, but the weld is long, so that's going to pull a lot. But I'm going to get in there and whack at it and see what happens. Okay, I'm not going to tack the ends because it's very long along that axis, and I just don't think it can weld too much. It can work too much along that axis. I mean, it takes a lot of power, to bend it this way. So I just don't think it's going to happen. Now, of course, my helmet is trying to fall off. I don't understand these people who put their helmets on at the beginning of a session and then everything's fine. That's all they have to do. My helmet slides off all the time. Doesn't matter how tight I get it. Okay. Flipping off the way too long end of my wire. I'm all comfortable. My welder is set up. Let's see what happens. Well, I'm not all that comfortable. Let's do this. Well, by my standards, that's like the greatest weld ever produced. I am quite pleased with that. Very, very happy. I'll see what I can do with the ends. And of course the wire is sticking way too far out. I think I'll do the end that the light is shining on first, because I'll have to move it in order to weld the other end. How are we doing? Oh, that came out all right. Oh, I'm happy. Put my MIG gun down on the little stand that usually makes wire squirt out of it. Not quite sure why it's hard to design a MIG gun stand that doesn't depress the trigger. Maybe I have an invention in my future. Okay, the light is moved. It may be tough to get comfortable for this, but I'm going to do what I can. Oh yeah. I had a hard time seeing the weld puddle for a long time. I may have mentioned this before. And I read that can be caused, that night blindness, difficulty with contrast can be caused by a vitamin A problem. So I started taking vitamin A and suddenly I can see the puddle pretty well. I don't know if that's had long enough to cool before I work on the other side. I'm going to have to take all this stuff off. Well, let's see what happens. I mean, I look at it this way. This thing, there's a lot of leverage on this thing, and if it warps a little bit one way or the other, maybe I can bend it back the other way. But I got to get in here, and this little space down here is not enough to weld through, in my opinion. It's going to look bad. Whoops. Oh, come on, get in there. I cannot say enough about how neat it is to use a fixturing table, even if it's a cheap one from Northern Tool. It is really nice to be able to have this thing to hold stuff how I want it. Really a treat. See if I can get around the table. Okay, pick up the MIG gun, move it away from the tripod. That should really go. Turn off the ever-present extra stick out. Look for my glove, which is in my hand. Well, let's see how this goes. Stop that, stop hissing. I haven't done anything yet. Doing it in steps like that may not be ideal, but I didn't want to have a big glob where the tack was. Maybe that's wrong. Maybe somebody actually knows how to weld can tell me. I thought if I went straight over that tack weld that I would have a big hump where it was. Well, that came out good. Well, I think that's about it. I'll just, do likewise on the remaining legs, and we'll see what happens. Well, this is where it stands right now. These uprights here went in pretty well, but there's just a tiny bit of warpage. They're kind of pushing in, even though I use clamps, even though I use the fixturing table and the fireball tool squares and all that stuff. They still kind of pulled in slightly. So what I did was, I did what all brilliant welders do. I stuck a piece of wood in there. I cut it very precisely on the bandsaw. One nice thing about wood, when you cut it, it pretty much stays the size that it is. You don't have to, well, okay, that's a big lie. I mean, it warps later on and stuff like that. But it's not like metal, which goes crazy while you're working on it. So that's what I'm working on, and you'll notice that I've got what all real expert welders have, a little bit of bird poop on my wood right there, and I think that helps. So I got it all lined up, and I'm going to try to weld this, and this will be the front of the Arbor press stand. Now, whether it's leaning that way is anyone's guess. I really would like to try to get this thing within, a 1/16 of an inch or so straight in every possible way, but, well, if I can't, I can always cut it up and use it for scrap again. So let's see what happens. Okay, I got two legs stuck on this thing, and I got the cross piece at the bottom that's going to join up to the wheels, the casters. And now I'm trying to put this final leg, not final, third leg on this thing. Really, if I wanted to do this correctly, the square would be on the other side of that leg, because they tend to bow inward, they don't bow outward. And where the square is now, it's working to keep it from bowing outward, which is probably not that helpful. But the thing is, I welded the other side the wrong way. I put the square in the wrong place. And the legs both kind of bent inward pretty much to the same degree, and then when I put the piece of wood with the bird poop between them, it pushed them back out. So I feel like I ought to be, consistency is more important than accuracy. I think if that's what I did with these other ones, I should do that with these two, and whatever weirdness they come out with should match up and cancel out. That's my hope. Otherwise, again, the scrap heap. Another glorious day has dawned, and as you can see, I have put this thing together, and now I have a yardstick to point at it with, because people always look more intelligent in videos when they hold something long and point at stuff with it. You know, I screwed up here, and I screwed up over here, and then I screwed up over there. You know, I point at things, and it gives me it conveys a sense of authority, even though I'm telling you I screwed up. So I like this a lot. What happened? Well, I put this thing together, and, you know, unfortunately, I only learn from mistakes. Other people are able to learn from other people's problems, but not me. I have to make my own mistakes, apparently, even though I tried. I got this crazy table and all these clamps and whatever, and I thought I had everything fixed. I thought if I clamped this thing in place, it would not warp at all. And it turns out that's total nonsense. I mean, I like the fireball tool stuff, and I like the fixturing table, but stuff moves. It just moves. That's the way it is. I've heard all kinds of weird advice, like you're supposed to tack things together and then make short welds and then move around and make one weld here and one weld there. And it sounds like if you followed that advice, you would end up with something with a whole bunch of half-inch long welds that don't blend together very well and look terrible. Maybe that's the way you're supposed to do everything. Maybe there really are no good welders. Maybe there are only people who are good at grinding. You know, maybe they actually weld that way and then they cover everything up. I don't know. But I can tell you that clamping things in place while you're welding them does not prevent them from warping. That's just doesn't work that way. So I got some trouble here. These two legs right here are a certain distance apart here, and down at the other end they were a different distance apart. So that was a problem. Please excuse me. I got this all. No, yeah, that's right. So I had to put wood between these things. I had to go cut it on the bandsaw and stick it in here to hold them apart, and then I welded them up, and I welded these bottom bits on. Well, these things are nice and square to the legs. Both of these are. But now there's the distance between this side and this side, both top and bottom. It's not really the same. So I figured, well, I'll fix that. I'll do the same thing I did with the other problem. I cut myself a piece of wood and I stuck it in here in one end. Actually, I stuck it up here in this end. And I thought, well, that's all fixed. But then I thought, well, what if it's different on the bottom than it is on the top? So I measured this one and it was different. And I said, well, I'll stick two pieces of wood in, one on this side, one on that side. Well, that doesn't work because then, unless the pieces of wood are exactly the same length, one of the pieces of wood will fall out. The big one will spread the legs too far. So I found out what I really needed to do was to put a piece of wood on one end to push them apart, and put a big clamp on the other end to push them together. So I got that done. But then these things were kind of, you know, can you see my hand? I don't even know. They were like this, like, you know, like a scissor kind of a thing. Like this one was pointed up and this one was pointed down at the end. So I had another dimension to worry about. Well, I got it all fixed up with these other clamps, then I stuck it on the table, and what I decided to try was I clamped both of these legs to the table, and now it has to be flat. Either that or the table has to bend. So these things have to be pretty well square. As far as I can tell, they are. This is going to put some twisting tension on this thing, and it's going to try to bend the legs and all that, but it's not going to amount to squat. Once the thing is turned over, you know, if it amounts to a 1/16 of an inch at this end, I'd be amazed. And the other thing, I don't really care. I figure if the thing is under a little stress when it's welded together, maybe that'll make it a little more rigid, I'm hoping. At this point, I feel like this approach is better than cutting it up and starting off with nothing. So I plan to stick one or two pieces here across this way, and they will prevent that piece, or those pieces will prevent these guys from moving around. And if they don't, well, at least I got to do some welding today, and that was better than sitting in the house. I'll show you what happens after I do it. I don't know. It's just maybe I can get a shot of welding it. We'll see. Meanwhile, the camera will go on to take more pictures of the floor. Well, I did some more work. I cut this piece. I couldn't find my other pointer stick. I put it down someplace. Anyway, I cut this piece exactly the right length to go in here, and I cleaned it off with the knot wheel. And I also used a flap wheel, a Walter flap wheel, to grind off most of this seam here, so that when it's painted, you won't be able to see it. Not that it matters, because it'll be on the bottom. But there's a lot of other seams on this thing that I should have turned in and didn't. Well, I don't know if there's a lot. There's 2, and then, let's see, there's 1 here. Okay, so there are a lot. There's 4 of them. I should have turned them inside so they wouldn't show through the paint, and I need a way to get rid of them. So now I know how to do that. Between the knot wheel and what you do is you go right over with a flap wheel, and that takes off most of it, and then the knot wheel polishes it out. So I got this thing in here, and it's exactly the right, I got it scribed here and here, so this thing's at exactly the right height to go in. But over here, the crossbar is like 3/8 of an inch higher than it's supposed to be, than the middle of this thing. I got a scribe line here. So I'm trying to figure out what to do about that. I think what I'll do is I'll weld this side, and then once that's done, I'll try to shove this side upward and maybe clamp it with a vice grip or something and hold it in place long enough to weld it. So it may work, and then again, as I've said several times, there's always a scrap heap. So I'll let you know. Well, here we are post-tacking. Hang on, anything to point with. So put the tacks in down here and propped it up on this table. And the reason I did that was I was putting it on the garage floor, I'm sorry, the workshop floor, to see if it rocked or anything. And then it occurred to me that the floor probably wasn't very level. The closest thing I've got to level that's big enough to hold this, unless I want to put this on my table saw, is this thing right here. This thing's pretty good. So I stuck it on here, and it's acceptable. I'm really surprised how well it came out. These things are not completely down, but as you can see, this thing won't go under it. I mean, the difference between one side and the other is probably around 1/16 of an inch. And I don't think I could have done that better if I knew what I was doing. So very pleased. I'm going to finish up the welds and, you know, grind off the big nasty ones that I made out of desperation and try to make it look pretty. And then next time I work on this, I suppose I'll start filling in these holes with metal because I just don't like them. So that went surprisingly well. I mean, considering the general ineptitude and lack of experience that went into it, I am quite pleased. Well, by my standards, this came out really well. Some of the welds are pretty globby. There's some places where I couldn't really get that comfortable, and I just had to get in there however I could, so I just left a glob and figured I'd take it off later. But anyway, it looks pretty good. The top is nice. Believe it or not, the top is flat. I assumed it was warped, and that was what was causing the problem. But I put a straight edge on it, and it's okay. The legs are pretty well parallel, and I forced everything down here on the bottom to behave. I got everything all tightened up, and I mean, you can find a little rock in it, but that's really pretty minimal. Slap some wheels on that, and that'll be ready to go. So now all I have to decide is, do I want to put a shelf in here? Also, I think I'm going to put a couple of little extensions out here. I was talking about those before. That'll go out this way, and they'll have screws that go down through them like this into the, not into the floor, but against the floor to keep the thing from, leaning over this way when you use it. So, really happy. I mean, it's going to work. It may not be the best Arbor press stand that ever existed, but the average person that walks in here is not going to have any idea. It's not going to rock or wobble around or anything like that. It's going to be, straightened up with the wheels and all that. And it's definitely strong enough. And it's going to get my Arbor press off the floor. I may go crazy and put the Arbor press on my Harbor Freight pneumatic table, whatever it is, hydraulic table, and stick it on here before I leave the workshop. So, not bad at all. Now all I got to do is grind down the weld so it looks like I knew what I was doing in the first place, and just add a few more little things to it, and I'm done. Excellent. Well, you have to see the wonderful thing that I've done here. Oh, now this magnet is stuck to the thing that I'm trying to use as a pointer. Okay. I don't know where my other pointer went, so I'm going to use this. I put some tacks over here, and it's really kind of disingenuous to call them tacks. I would say they're more like nails. I mean, this one's like a good 3/4 of an inch long. So I got this thing held in, and then this end over here had to be elevated somehow. I thought, how am I going to do this? And finally I decided to rely on a wood clamp, this carpenter's clamp, this orange thing here. And it's got nice rubber or silicone pads on it, so if I weld for more than like 8 seconds, it's going to melt. But I was able to use it to jack this center bar up until the scribe marks match and it's level, and then I use this thing to make sure the bar is in the correct you know, that it's on the same level as this bottom piece. This is the bottom, this whole thing. So, things are working extremely well compared to how they ought to be working. That doesn't really necessarily mean they are working, but it looks good compared to how it could look. So, back shortly.